we always graph with an equal sign, but today we're going to graph with a thing that is called an inequality. Less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. We dealt with these last week. You saw that we could solve equations in that sense. We graphed them. You could see what was actually going on. So let's look at what happens when we're going to graph them on a graph, on a plane. So we're going to do some important backstory first. So the important backstory about graphing is this. Really what I'm doing is I'm checking an ordered pair. So if I have an ordered pair, I have it right here, 2, 4, right? Always it goes x, y. So my 2 in this scenario is my x, and my 4 is my y. So what I'm checking with this inequality is if I plugged in 4 for y, and I plugged in 2 for x, so kind of some substitution in here, is my inequality true? Well, in order to figure that out, I'm going to have to say, okay, on this right side, what's 3 times 2 plus 1? Well, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And so I read that is 4 less than 7. Well, I think a lot of you would say yes, you'd much rather have 7 cookies than just 4, right? So yes, my ordered pair fits my inequality. So when an inequality is with two variables, with an x and a y, is a comparison in a graph for your ordered pairs. Okay, so that's really what's going on. Now, specifically when I'm looking at a graph, you should know two things. Okay, when I have inequalities that is just less than or greater than, okay, I'm going to represent that by a dotted line. A dotted line. I need to write in cursive. There we go. So it goes. So dotted line. If I'm going to look at less than or equals to or greater than or equals to, that's when I'm going to use a solid line. Okay, so my solid lines are going to be less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Okay, and you're going to see how that plays out here in a second as we scroll down. So let's look at this first graph. I think these are one of these types of problems that you learn best by example. So I have these first two in here. Number 1, y is less than 3x plus 1. How can I represent this on a graph? I always start by graphing my line. Okay, and I'm going to make life easy for you, and most of your examples are going to be in slope-intercept form, okay? So, very nicely, I see that I have slope-intercept form. The thing in front of my x at 3, that's my slope, we call it m. The thing that's all by itself, the 1, we call that the y-intercept, so hopefully you remember some of this, and the quizzes helped you remember some of it from yesterday. So my y-intercept is on my y-axis, the up and down axis. So I'm going to start with a point at y equals 1. I'm going to then graph my slope. Now, my slope is 3, so I can really think about that as 3 over 1. Okay? Remember that I always talk about rise over run for my slope. So when I talk about rise, I'm going up. So I'm going to start by going up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And there's my first point. I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1. Rise over run. And you can make a couple other points if you want. I know that most of you kind of have this down by now. And I have my points in my graph. Now, this is where you got to be careful. I'm going to look at that sign. The sign is where you can sometimes get thrown off. Okay, I got that sign that's a less than sign. It's not a less than or equals to, it's just a less than, which means that I'm actually going to form my graph using a dotted line. Now, this is where maybe life gets a little bit hard on using the iPad, so bear with me as my dotted line may look rough. But I'm going to create a dotted line up my graph, okay? So there's my dotted line. Y is less than 3x plus 1. Now, what I told you at the very beginning is that really what I'm looking at is, do ordered pairs fit my inequality? So this is always what I do. I like to pick an ordered pair. It doesn't matter what you pick. So I'm going to pick this point right here. And I'm going to say this is 4, 2. And I'm going to check, does this make my inequality work? Remember, the 4 is my x, the 2 is my y. So I'm going to plug it in. So I'm going to say, okay, is 2 less than 3 times 4 plus 1? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and solve that right side. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Oh, and I realize that, in fact, 2 is less than 13. And so I'm right. So if I'm right, that's where my final step comes. And you might remember this from your future or from your previous math classes. I'm going to shade in the part of the graph that has that point. So I'm going to shade in everything to this side of my graph. And that is my solution. So instead of just a line, I'm actually looking at an entire section of the graph. It's that entire section of green. If I were to go over here and start shading this, I would be wrong because my line separates those two sides. And I don't want that, okay? And that's my final. So let's look at another one. I'm going to try y is greater than or equal to negative 2x plus 8. So just like before, I'm going to start by saying, let me get rid of the eraser. Start by saying my negative 2 is my slope. Okay, we always remember that I can do negative 2 over 1, right, if there's nothing over it. Okay, my 8, that's going to be my y-intercept. We're going to cut intercept short. So I'm going to start by saying plus 8. And I'm going to work my way down because my slope is negative 2 over 1. So instead of going up 2 over 1, I'm going to go down 2 over 1. I'm going to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. And pretty soon you can start to see your graph starting to form. Now the question is, do I want a dotted line or a solid line? Well, it's greater than or equals to, which entails that I need a solid line because it's equals to that line, okay? It represents that part of the solution group is that line. And now I'm going to check a point. So let's say this. Let's say I'm going to check this point right here. Let's check the point 6, 6. Why not? Oops. I did 5, 6. Oh well, I guess we'll check 5, 6. Let's check this one. Okay, just like before, my ordered pair always comes in the form x, y. So I'm going to plug in 5 for my x and 6 for my y. So it's going to be 6 greater than or equal to negative 2 times 5 plus 8. Okay, and I have to figure out what that right side is. So let's see. Negative 2 times 5 is actually a negative 10. So negative 10 plus 8 is what I'm looking at. Negative 10 plus 8, so x is greater than or equal to, it looks like a negative 2, right? Okay, so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, oh, is that true? Is 6 greater than or equal to negative 2? Yes, it is. So I know I did it right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shade that side of the graph because I want that side for my inequality, and you can really shade it if you want. There you go. You could even experiment. You could try a different point like 0, 0. You could just try it and see if it works. Is 0 greater than or equal to negative 2 times 0? So 0 plus 8. So you're checking, is 0 greater than or equal to 8? Is that true? 0 is definitely less than 8, so I know that there's a problem, which is why I didn't shade that part that had the 0 in it, right? That would have been wrong because that ordered pair doesn't fit my equation. So that's kind of how these things work, okay? I hope that's helpful to you. I'm not having you turn in your notes today, although it's always nice to kind of follow along and try them. These last two problems could be good for you to try. Okay, so maybe you want to pause this video, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my solutions up so you can pause it and then you can check your solutions. I won't talk through my answers. I'll just put them up quickly, and then you can kind of go from there and try some Math Excel. Finish this year strong. You guys are so close. I'm so proud of the work you've been doing. So keep it up. Go ahead, pause it, try these next 2 problems, and then I'll put those answers up. Also, right here, I probably would use a calculator, just to let you know. There you go, guys. There's some good examples of how to solve some inequalities, how to graph these things. I hope this makes sense. Reach out if you have any questions. Hop on those Zoom meetings. Let me know. I wish you the best of luck. See ya.